Years ago, Gooseworx was already known in indie animation circles for making bizarre, chaotic, and incredibly creative projects, but everything changed when the amazing Digital Circus suddenly exploded into one of the biggest indie animation projects on the internet. What started as a personal passion project quickly turned into a massive global phenomenon filled with endless theories, content farms, leaks, drama, and constant pressure from millions of fans. And the bigger the series became, the more it felt like the internet stopped treating it like art and started treating it like content to consume as fast as possible. Now, with the fandom becoming increasingly toxic and even an unreleased episode getting leaked online, a lot of people are starting to wonder if the success of Digital Circus is slowly destroying the person who created it. To understand what is happening now, you have to go back to what Gooseworx was before any of this, because the version of her that exists in the public eye today is very different from the creator, who was quietly building strange, experimental things in the corners of the internet that most people never found. Before Digital Circus, she was making music, weird short animations, and projects that had the energy of someone who was genuinely just following whatever interested her without worrying about whether it would find a big audience. Her style was chaotic in the best possible way, the kind of creative chaos that only comes from someone making things purely because they want to, without a brand to protect or a fandom to manage. When the pilot first came out, it had that same feeling, something weird and funny and personal that did not look like it was trying to be anything other than what it was. It felt like a project someone made because they genuinely wanted to, not because they were trying to build a brand or grow an audience, and that honesty is a big part of why it connected with people so quickly. This is important to understand because what happened next changed everything, and the gap between where Gooseworx started and where she ended up is what makes the story of Digital Circus genuinely hard to sit with. The pilot dropped in October 2023, and the numbers were unlike anything the indie animation world had seen in a long time, reaching tens of millions of views within days and spreading everywhere at once. Fan edits and theory videos started appearing almost instantly, and the fandom that formed around the show grew faster than anyone, including Gooseworx herself, could have expected. The people who showed up were not just the indie animation crowd that had been following her work quietly for years, but a much bigger and more varied group that included very young viewers, casual fans who found the characters through recommended shorts, and people who had never really watched this kind of content before. That fast growth brought things that happen whenever something on the internet blows up and the content machine gets hold of it. Thumbnail farms appeared using the characters in ways that had nothing to do with the actual show, and the characters started showing up in brainrot videos and clickbait content that felt completely disconnected from what the show actually was. Kids who were nowhere near the intended audience started watching, which changed how the show was talked about and what people expected from it. And somewhere in all of that, the show started to feel a little less like Gooseworx's and a little more like everyone else's. Because that is what happens when something goes from personal project to internet phenomenon. The toxicity that built up around Digital Circus did not arrive all at once but grew in layers, and each layer did damage in a different way. The first and most visible one was the constant pressure for new episodes, with parts of the fandom getting increasingly impatient between releases and treating the production timeline as something they were owed rather than something that takes real time and effort to put together. Every gap between episodes brought complaint posts, theories about whether the show was falling apart, and in some cases, direct messages to Gooseworx asking where the next episode was, as if the person who built everything from scratch was somehow behind on a delivery. The second layer was the over-analysis that turned every public statement she made into a big deal, where a single tweet or a casual comment would be screenshotted, shared, and picked apart by thousands of people looking for clues about the show's direction or just something to react to. That level of attention, where everything you say publicly becomes material for someone else's argument, is exhausting in a way that is hard to explain if you have not been through it. And it puts a creator in a position where staying quiet generates speculation and speaking openly guarantees that something gets taken out of context. The third layer was the sense of ownership that a part of the fandom developed toward the show and toward Gooseworx herself, where creative decisions she made were treated as something the community had a right to have a say in, where fan theories became so much a part of the culture that people felt genuinely let down when the real story went in a different direction, and where the line between being a fan and feeling like you own something quietly disappeared. When a piece of work gets that big, the creator stops being just the person who made it and starts being a public figure that an audience expects things from in ways that go way beyond what a normal creative relationship should ever look like. And then came the leak, and the tone of everything shifted again, because what happened with the last act going online before its official release is not just a spoiler situation, even though that is how a lot of people framed it. It is something more serious than that, which is having years of work, the emotional weight of finishing a story you have been building for a long time, and the specific experience you carefully designed for your audience, all of that taken out of your hands and thrown into the internet in the worst possible conditions. A Portuguese dub pulled through malware from a dubbing studio, compressed and incomplete, spreading across Reddit and TikTok, and being consumed by people who then went online to declare the ending bad based on what they saw. The psychological weight of that is hard to overstate, because the moment of a finale releasing is something a creator lives with for a long time during the production. It is a specific thing they are working toward, and having it land the way the last act's leak landed means that Gooseworx could not experience that moment the way she planned to, and neither could a significant portion of the audience that deserved to go in clean. People were selling their merch collections based on secondhand accounts of a pirated copy. Fans were forming opinions and spreading them at scale before the film had a single official screening. And through all of it, there was nothing she could do to stop it. Gooseworx posted on Blue Sky that she cannot keep her heart in the show anymore, and that it has gotten too big for her, and that she probably should not be the face of something at this scale. And while it would not be right to make specific claims about what she is going through internally, it is not hard to imagine what years of this kind of pressure accumulates into. Creative burnout is a real thing, and it tends to look exactly like this: a gradual loss of enthusiasm for the work itself, a growing distance between the person making something and the joy they originally felt making it, and a point where the thing you created starts to feel more like a weight than a source of energy. There is also the specific kind of exhaustion that comes from feeling constantly watched, where every creative choice carries the awareness that millions of people are going to react to it, where the fear of disappointing an audience that has built enormous expectations starts to shape the work in ways that pull it away from what it was originally meant to be. That tension between making something true to your vision and managing the expectations of an audience that has developed its own version of what your work should be is one of the hardest things a creator can face, and Gooseworx has been living inside it for the past 2 years at a scale that most people making things on the internet will never have to deal with. The contrast between where this started and where it ended up is probably the most honest way to understand what the title of this video is actually about, because the word destroyed is a strong one and it deserves to be used carefully. What it means here is not that Gooseworx is broken as a person, because she is still here and still speaking, but that something specific was taken from her by the process of this show becoming what it became, which is the ability to simply make something strange and personal and put it into the world without the weight of millions of people's expectations attached to every decision. That version of creating, the one where you are just following your own instincts and seeing what comes out, is the version that produced Digital Circus in the first place, and it is genuinely hard to see how she gets back to it from where things are now. The show gave this fandom something real and rare, and the way parts of that fandom treated the person who made it is worth sitting with honestly, not to feel guilty about having loved the show, but to think about what it actually means to support a creator versus what it means to consume them. Those are different things, and the story of the amazing Digital Circus is, among other things, a very clear example of what happens when the line between them disappears. Do you think the fandom played a role in what happened to Gooseworx? And looking at everything from the beginning until now, what do you think could have gone differently? Drop it in the comments, because this is a conversation this community actually needs to have.